4 months after she vanished, the people who took Nancy Guthrie did something kidnappers almost never do. They wrote to her family, not to demand money. They had already done that. This second letter was different. It said she was dead. It said she had been buried, in their words, with nature. And then it said something that does not belong anywhere near a kidnapping. We are truly sorry. Think about that. You take an 84-year-old woman from her bed in the middle of the night, and then, months later, you apologize for it. Kidnappers who do this for money don't say sorry. They go silent. They disappear. So who took Nancy Guthrie? And why would they feel the need to apologize? This is a case built almost entirely out of machines. A doorbell camera, a pacemaker, a signal in the dark. And it is one of the strangest disappearances in recent memory. Let me show you what actually happened. Starting with the night, everything went quiet. It is the foot of the mountains outside Tucson, Arizona. A quiet, expensive street in the Catalina foothills. At 1:47 in the morning, a doorbell camera at one of the homes goes dark. Not a dead battery, not a glitch. It simply stops. 25 minutes later, a second device fails. A small medical sensor inside the house, the kind that quietly reports a heartbeat to an app, disconnects. At 2:28 in the morning, it goes silent. A camera goes blind. Something moves in the dark. And then the device tethered to an old woman's heart drops off the network entirely. What happened in those 41 minutes, investigators have never said. By noon, Nancy Guthrie was gone from her own home. There was blood on her porch. And the only clear image of the person who came for her was a masked figure with a backpack, caught by her own cameras. So who was she? Because the headlines reduced her to a relationship, and she was a whole life before she was a mystery. Nancy Guthrie was an 84-year-old widow, rooted in Tucson for more than 50 years. Born in Kentucky in 1942, widowed in 1988 when her husband died suddenly. She worked at the University of Arizona. She led a local professional association. She was religious, community-minded, with a daily routine, limited mobility, and a pacemaker. The kind of quiet vulnerabilities that would become tragically central to what happened to her. And yes, she is the mother of a face you know. Savannah Guthrie, the national morning news anchor. That connection is why this case went everywhere at once. But it is not what makes it strange. What makes it strange is the evidence. Because almost all of it was written by machines. Start with the cameras. The intruder apparently tried to disable the home system. But modern smart cameras don't only store video on site. They push data to the cloud, and they leave residual records even when the live feed is cut. The masked man footage was pulled from exactly that kind of recovered data. The intruder thought he had gone dark. The system remembered him anyway. Then, the most haunting detail of all. Nancy had a pacemaker and an app that monitored it. That app disconnected at 2:28 in the morning, and according to reporting, investigators took an extraordinary step. They put a signal-detecting helicopter in the air, a so-called signal sniffer, and flew it over the desert, searching for any emission that might match her device. Think about what that means. They were, quite literally, flying over the desert hoping a missing woman's heart monitor might still be whispering somewhere in the dark. That is not a normal search. That is investigators chasing the faint electronic ghost of a human being. Then the biological evidence. There was DNA recovered from the property that did not belong to Nancy or anyone in her close circle. That sample is still being worked at the FBI lab in Quantico, a critical active lead that could still break this case wide open. In a case with a masked, unidentified suspect, that unknown DNA may be the single most direct path to a name, through a criminal database or genetic genealogy. The reporting has been careful. The source, the location, the quality of that sample are not public. But it is still there, still waiting to speak. And here is the discipline this case demands, because not every lead is the answer. For a while, there were gloves, found about 2 miles from the house. They felt like the thread that would unravel everything. Drop the gloves while fleeing, run the DNA, name the man. The DNA came back, and it matched a restaurant worker with no connection to the case whatsoever. A dead end. A reminder that in a real investigation, the most promising clue and the most useless one can look identical until the lab speaks. Now, before we get to those letters, there is a piece of this story you have to understand, because for months, it was the only ransom story the public had, and it was a lie. This is where the case stops being a kidnapping and starts becoming something stranger. Days after Nancy vanished, her family received a ransom demand. Federal investigators arrested a 42-year-old California man, Derek Colella. According to the Department of Justice, he sent the family texts, made a brief call, and demanded payment in Bitcoin. After his arrest, prosecutors say he admitted he had pulled the family's information off a data broker website, used an internet phone account to hide, and just wanted to see if they would respond. He was not the kidnapper. Prosecutors were explicit. He was an imposter. Someone exploiting a missing woman's family for money. His fake note is its own crime, walled off completely from the disappearance itself. Hold that distinction carefully, because it is exactly what made the real letters so hard to see. For months, the only ransom the public knew about was the hoax, the cruel one, the one that was just theater for profit, which is why what surfaced this summer hit so hard, because it suggested that buried underneath the hoax, there had been real letters all along, from someone who actually had her. In June, more than 4 months after Nancy disappeared, reporting surfaced that reframed the entire case. According to multiple news organizations citing law enforcement sources, investigators came to believe that some of the original ransom notes, separate from Colella's hoax, may have come from the actual abductors. There were, by these accounts, 2 of them. The first, sent days after she vanished, reportedly demanded millions, paid in Bitcoin, for her release. It carried, at least, the shape of hope, the implication that she was alive, that this could end with her coming home. The second note took that away. According to sources cited by ABC News, Fox News, and others, it said Nancy Guthrie had died shortly after she was taken, and that she had been, in the words attributed to the note, buried with nature. And it carried that phrase that does not belong anywhere near a violent kidnapping. We are truly sorry. Her daughter, speaking on national television in the spring, said she believed the 2 notes the family responded to were real. At the time, that was a daughter's instinct. The summer reporting suggests investigators may have reached the same conclusion through evidence. I want to sit with that apology because it may be the most revealing piece of this entire case, not forensically, but psychologically. A kidnapping for ransom is, in cold logic, a business transaction. You take a person, you extract money, you disappear. Communication is a risk. Every word is a thread that can be pulled. The professional move, after a ransom goes wrong, is silence. Vanish. Never write again. These people did the opposite. They wrote back to apologize, and that breaks the pattern in a way that tells us something. There are really only 2 ways to read that apology, and they lead to very different people. The first is genuine panic. The shift from millions in Bitcoin for her release to "she died, we're sorry" reads like a plan that collapsed. People who took her expecting a living hostage and a clean payday, and instead found themselves with a death they never intended. An 84-year-old woman with a heart condition who did not survive whatever happened in those dark minutes. Under that reading, "we are truly sorry," is the sound of amateurs realizing they have become killers. The second reading is colder, that the apology is performance, writing. "We're truly sorry" to a victim's family while never returning the body, never turning yourself in, never giving them the one thing that would actually help. That is not remorse. It is a way to feel absolved without paying any price for it. The final cruelty, dressed up as conscience. And the unsettling part is that both can be true at once. A monster with a conscience just large enough to apologize, but not large enough to confess. So here is where the Nancy Guthrie case actually leaves us. Most disappearances are a story of silence. A person is gone, and the absence of any word is the whole agony. This one may be the opposite. The people responsible may have broken the silence themselves. They demanded. They apologized. And then they went quiet again, leaving a family with a porch full of dried blood, a masked figure on a screen, and that almost unbelievable apology. If that's true, then somewhere out there are people who know exactly what happened to Nancy Guthrie, who know where nature is, who felt enough to write an apology, but not enough to bring her home or to face what they did. And that is the question I can't shake. We want to believe an apology means a conscience, that someone who says, "I'm sorry," could still do the right thing. But these people have already shown you the limit of their conscience. It stops exactly at the point where telling the truth would cost them something. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. This case is still open. If anything changes, we will be here to cover it. Because Nancy's case is not the only one where the people who knew the truth chose silence over a grieving family. There are others. Cases where a single withheld detail was the whole answer. And we will be telling those too. I am Carson Morgan. Until next time. Stay curious. Stay safe.